Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I start this regular City Council meeting, January 23rd, 2019 at 6:30. Madam Clerk, if you will do roll call. Oh, call to order. Sorry, I don't have my teleprompter with me this morning. Call to order. Invocation. If we'll all stand for a moment of silence. And if you'll all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. So, start us off. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, will you do roll call, please?
Councillor Davis. Councillor Yank.
Here.
Councillor Bowlby. Here. Councillor Cormier.
Here.
Councillor Warner.
Here.
Vice Mayor Kojin.
Here.
Mayor Tappan.
Here. Item number 5, priority list. 5.1, discussion and action and possible action to council's strategic priorities. You want to talk on that? I think we're going to be meeting in March, first weekend in March. Number 5.2, discussion and possible action by City Council pertaining to individual priorities. And moving on to the minutes.
We approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Consent agenda. All portions of the consent agenda will be done in one undebatable motion passed unanimously.
Move to approve the consent portion of the agenda.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item with business on it, number 9, hearing from the citizens. The public may address the City Council on any items not listed on the agenda, but please remember, council cannot respond or take action. Is there anyone who'd like to speak? Sir?
I live at 407 South Navajo. By way of introduction, I moved to this community in 1963 at the whopping age of 27 days and went through high school here, left for a little bit of time to pursue my education and get married. I married a local girl, came back roughly 24 years ago, and for the last 24 years I've been the CEO of Encompass Health Services. Also, by way of introduction, just so you guys know, because unfortunately our local paper erroneously stated that Encompass Health Services is closed. We're not closed. We shut down a medical program, just a program that was to the public. We still do roughly $7 to $8 million worth of social services and behavioral health services in the community. So we're still alive and very healthy. We just had to go backwards a little ways. Again, I mentioned that I live at 407 South Navajo. My neighbors and I are extremely concerned. When I moved back here to Page in 1995, some of you will remember there were some things called turtle islands that had been installed kind of throughout the community. One of them was on the turn at Aspen and Lake Powell Boulevard to prevent people from turning north onto Aspen that were coming up Walmart Hill. I'm assuming that they did that because the city or somebody else did a traffic study prior to 1995 and went, man, there's an issue with local traffic in this area. I listened to your presentation this morning. You did good. That was a very good presentation. One of the things that you said is that from 2014 to 2017, our tourism has more than doubled. I wonder what it's done prior to 1995 to 2019. It's way more than doubled. And yet, what we experience on my road, and I can't give you, I can't tell you where I came up with these numbers. They came from right here. But my guesstimation is that roughly 80 to 90% of the cars that drive in front of my house are driving really fast. If they have California plates, they're driving 40 to 60 miles an hour. If they have Page or Arizona plates and they're local residents, they're driving 35 to 45 miles an hour. People just hit South Navajo and fly. They've got to get to Walmart. If they're at Safeway and they're a tourist and they've got to get to their tour, or they've got to go to Horseshoe Bend, their GPS now tells them, don't go onto Lake Powell Boulevard, take Navajo and fly like the dickens. The road is too wide and somebody's going to get hurt. That road from the stoplight at Sinclair to Aspen is surrounded by a city park. You guys are pouring a lot of money into that. There's going to be a lot of families there, a lot of events that you ask to be held, etc. A school district, that entire span, Birch Circle, which is where Little League Baseball, Little League Soccer, Little League Football, family events, all of that stuff takes place there. And I cannot tell you, I get chills, I cannot tell you the amount of 4 or 5-year-old kids over the last 2 years that I've seen almost die in front of people that were driving 50 to 60 miles an hour. Nobody can control their kids the entire time, and if you have a 5-year-old that runs out into the middle of that doggone road from a practice or whatever, somebody's going to get hurt badly. I bring this to you today because I know that we're talking about some change in the future, and I want to go on record as saying that's one that we have got to focus on. I have nearly 100 employees in Page. Nearly 100 of them are telling me, yeah, I know South Navajo is very busy, but it's busy on my street too. There are vacation rental properties probably on every street in Page, and people are trying to get somewhere in a hurry. I went around my neighborhood today and I talked to my neighbors. Not one of them can recall over the course of 2 years, maybe 3 years since Chief Balcom was here, anybody that's been pulled over for a traffic violation on South Navajo. We cannot recall seeing lights on South Navajo for years. I don't think it was his priority. I will take you up on your recommendation, Mr. Warner Dugan, to go talk to Tim Lane. I know him and I think he's a very good guy, and maybe he'll listen to me and maybe we can get somewhere as far as some immediate help. But there are some other things that I would like to propose that maybe you take into consideration. One of them is not going to be very popular, and that would be to take into consideration, because of the school and the residential area and the practices of teams and everything I just talked about, the possibility of making it a 15-mile-an-hour zone from that stoplight to Aspen, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. 15 miles an hour. That'll slow people down to 25, and us residents that right now are yelling and screaming at California plates. You say that people aren't returning, Mayor? I'm probably one of the reasons. I cannot tell you the amount of people that I have yelled and screamed at. I can also tell you, so most of you know I used to employ a local chiropractor. He's one of the most humble people I've ever met in my life. I've watched him watch a car drive through a 15-mile-an-hour school zone in front of my building at 50 miles an hour, and I've watched him turn around and run that person down and yell and scream, and that guy is about as mild-mannered as you can get. It's an issue. So that's one possible solution for at least my street, is for you to take that into consideration. Another one would be, I know that you've been into communities where you see little cutouts of kids, bright orange or bright green, and it says a little saying next to it, something like, "We value our children, please value them too and slow down." Something like that that could go around our community that can remind some of the people that are visiting our community, and quite frankly, some of the people that are living here too, that there are kids that are playing, that there are people, well, it won't be me. Many of you, I'm sure, have seen me in my front yard with my boat in front of my house washing it, but you haven't for the last 2 years because I don't want to die. It's literally that bad. I ask that you do another study on this, that you look at it, and that you maybe through your process of strategic planning, you ask the community, what do you think about the traffic issues around here? I guarantee you, everybody is going to say it's an issue. It's a bad issue for the safety of our locals. You said it today, we're the soul of this community. Now listen, you said that we're the soul of this community, and we are, but it's really hard to deliver customer service with a smile on your face when people are jeopardizing your own well-being in your neighborhood. So please just take that into consideration and maybe do some outreach to others to find out if it is indeed as big of an issue as I say it is. I thank you. I don't know, etiquette-wise, I don't think that you can respond, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to say I did have a conversation already that we are going to be, had a conversation with Mike, because you're not the only street that people are speeding on, so I've started that conversation. Okay.
Hi, my name is Tracy Parker. I live at 148 Fifth Avenue. And I didn't intend to speak on this tonight, but since Joe brought it up, it's been a common discussion in our household as well, is the traffic. And Joe had some valid, I think, suggestions with the speed limit and the, kid cutout signs, stuff like that. And he would know better than anyone, I think, living directly across from that ball field, and as much as it gets used, and by very young children that walk there from nearby in the community, the cars really do. They race down that street, and I've seen Joe and his wife both out cringing. As I drive by, I cringe. Speed really is an issue there. Also, I do live on Fifth Avenue, right down there in between the district office and Lake Powell Furniture, and I often am at that stop sign there by Lake Powell Furniture, and as far as I can see marked, there's a lane to turn left into the like Safeway, that area of the street, and then another lane to go straight or to turn right. There has been so many times where I have been in the lane to go straight or right, had my blinker on to make a right-hand turn so I can get to my street, and as I start to move, another car comes up right beside me, making a third lane right in front of the furniture store, and nearly drives into the side of my vehicle as I go to make my turn. And the circumstances are a little bit different, but it always gives me pause, because that's where Miss Keller, who was my neighbor, was killed, at that intersection right there. So it is, I think something needs to be done there. I would say the priority is probably the speed on Lake Powell Boulevard and Navajo first, though. I would say that. I think it was last month, there was a company that the city had bring in, looking at ideas for beautification of the downtown area. I attended that the second night, and one of the things that they did discuss and showed diagrams of was narrowing the main thoroughfare streets. And down to 2 lanes and maybe a turn lane in 2 lanes, and using the extra space for more parking and things like that. But that is another suggestion I'd like to add to Joe's, perhaps even on North Navajo, is narrowing that road. Because I think the wide road gives an illusion to people and tourists that it's a higher speed thoroughfare than what it really is. And so I just wanted to add that input. Thank you.
Sir.
I'm Jeremy Butts with the Courtyard by Marriott 600 Clubhouse Drive. I brought this up to some people before, but as the morning's event was great, and we talked about expanding our career-wise and education. One one of the things that I think we should try to look into is, I know it's not going to happen overnight and things don't happen like that, but some kind of expanded shuttle service that maybe goes out to Kaibato or something like that, that maybe leaves at 6 in the morning, goes back at 6 in the evening for staffing. You know we have a housing issue here. We do not have a lot. Hotels are opening every day. We're talking about new businesses, new thing and thriving, but we have that housing crisis. And I personally respect them, but I have probably 75% of my employees that have been with us for 21 years that hitchhike into work every day for dedication. So if we could bring people more and have a bigger support to have staffing and to bring them into our town, these people they're the ones that are like, as Mayor Tappan said, the servers, most of our servers, they are out in Lachie, out in Kaibato, they're coming in, they're the ones dealing with the people who are bringing money into our town. And I just think this is something that if we can put it on one of the agendas or something, look on it. I'm sure we've done it with some of the other properties in Florida where the businesses sponsor. It's a monthly charge. Like the businesses have, I'm just an example, $100 each business pays to the city, and that provides the maintenance, that provides whatever needs to be done to this vehicle, that does these trips out to bring people to help staffing with the needs that we need.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we have no unfinished business. We're moving on to new business. Item 11.1, discussion and possible action by City Council pertaining to Coconino County Board of Supervisors, Lena Fowler, presenting a grant in the amount of $50,000 to the City of Page for the assistance of the Grandview Knoll Overlook. And I'd like to clear up this is a multi-partner project like I talked about this morning. We need to have multi-partners. This is a multi-partner project to make this Grandview Knoll spearheaded by the Canyon Club. We also have the, what is that boat?
Friends of Lake Powell.
Thank you. The Friends of Lake Powell and the Coconino County is involved with this. Sorry, Paul. And the city is doing in-kind service. So the newspaper reported that the city is spending money out there, but we're only doing in-kind service, so this isn't costing the taxpayers money. But so we have a presentation to make here. I'm going to give it away to Mike for a minute.
Mayor, yes, we'd like to have Ms. Fowler come on up, and she has a few comments to report to the council as well.
Yate, Mayor and city members of the council, thank you for this opportunity. And I am Lena Fowler, Coconino County Supervisor and staff. And I'd like to have my staff here. I have a few staff with me to present the check to you. I have the county manager, Jimmy Jane, and Cynthia, and we also have Stephen. And maybe they can introduce themselves if we may. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Jimmy Jane. I serve as the Coconino County Manager. I've been in this role just over a year. So pleased to be with you both this morning and this evening. So, Mayor, thank you. And thank you, Michael.
Mayor, members of the council, my name is Cynthia Nemeth. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director for Coconino County. It's a true pleasure to be here this evening and a true pleasure to be part of this contribution, part of this partnership for this park. It truly is partnerships such as these that make great things happen in a community. And so I'm just delighted to be here with my colleagues to help share in this contribution.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, my name is Steve Mondre, and I'm a Page resident, a member of the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, and I serve on the Coconino County Parks and Recreation Commission for District 5. I was appointed by Supervisor Fowler in 2017. I think that this is a wonderful project, and I would want to say that it was due to Paul Ostapuk's vision and his ability to bring together a consensus of all the various people that have been involved in this project. And I want to thank him for that vision. Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, if we may, Cynthia has a few more words. Cynthia?
Thank you. After having introduced myself, I did want to take a moment to talk about my last visit here in Page, where I had the pleasure of meeting with stakeholders, Parks and Recreation stakeholders, as well as members of the public. We're in the process of a master plan, and this master plan, I think, will speak a lot to partnerships. We've been going around the county, talking to communities and hearing what they have to say. So we were here to hear what the community of Page had to say. The master plan will also incorporate regional plans and master plans. As we evaluate these things, we'll take information from those, and they'll also be part of this guiding decision-making document. And we expect that we'll see a lot of opportunities for additional partnerships, for shared resources, and opportunities for us to help by offering our technical expertise. So keep your eyes out. The master plan is not complete. Members of your community will be receiving a survey. It'll be a random survey, so it'll hit homes randomly. But then there will be an opportunity for all members of the public to complete the survey online, and I'll be working with Jackie and Mike to make sure that that information gets out to everybody. But just wanted to make sure that I had a moment to talk a little bit about that master plan, because it really will provide us a guiding a path forward and how we can continue to work together.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank Paul also, because he brought it to my attention, and so the Board of Supervisors approved the $50,000 for the Grandview Knoll project. So we are very happy to present that, I believe, a check to you. And how do we do this?
If council wants to come up here so we can get a photo op. Run and grab. Yeah, I'm gonna run and grab the Grandview. I'll have a picture of Grandview now.
Okay.
Let me go grab it, Lee, but is it on your wall? Bring this picture up. She was walking down the hallway. Can we just lean it up on that table right there? That's a beautiful aerial. I have it hanging in my office. It's so beautiful. So if you walk out later this evening, please take a look at that project. I don't think there's no motion to accept that check.
New business 11.2, discussion and possible action pertaining to job order contract with Lake Powell Construction and Development. I'll turn this over to our city attorney.
So that $50,000 is burning a hole in our pockets, so we need a contract to spend it. Because it's government funds, the project was initially spearheaded by the Canyon Club and Friends of Lake Powell, and as long as they're spending their own money, they don't have to follow any procurement rules of the city. But when they start spending government money, then we have to follow our procurement rules. So what we talked about was, I believe that the Canyon Club had intended to use Lake Powell Construction to do some general contracting out there. And the county has a job order contract with Lake Powell Construction, which allows for cooperative purchasing. So what this will do is, and what we're asking council to do, is to approve a job order contract with Lake Powell Construction through cooperative purchasing with Coconino County to allow us to hire Lake Powell Construction to do $50,000 worth of work out there and spend the county grant funds. So hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of convoluted, but
And I would say Lake Powell Construction works closely with the Canyon Club and provides services at a very deep discount, so.
Free. Mayor, move to approve the job order contract with Lake Powell Construction Development and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement.
Second. Discussion.
Motion and second, any discussion?
Do I have a conflict?
no, as long as you're not getting paid by the Canyon Club.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, as long as you don't have a financial interest.
Okay. All right, thanks.
More discussion? Motion is second to approve a contract with Lake Powell Construction. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Supervisor Fowler. Item 11.3, presentation by Contour Airlines of the overview and update on Contour Airline services. Mr. Chafez? Did I get close?
Mayor Tappan, members of the council, I'm sorry I didn't bring you guys a check, but I am proud to tell you that I believe that Contour has brought reliable air service back to Page. And I think you'll see here in a minute that reliability is translating into increased passenger enplanements, increased usage of the service here. And, one of the big questions that we had coming in was, the data was so skewed. Great Lakes' service had been so poor that it was very hard to discern what were the actual trends as a result of travel patterns and what patterns simply existed because Great Lakes' service had been so poor. So, more good news. I think we have some answers to those questions that will inform our decision-making or your decision-making going forward, and I'm happy to offer some suggestions or context where needed. But let me start by showing you what I think is a very, very telling slide. So the red and yellow lines are Great Lakes' passenger counts by month for 2016 and 2017. You'll notice in August, when we started service, was the only month where we carried fewer passengers than Great Lakes. And there's a very good reason for that. It's because we started service on August 15th and only flew for half the month. But starting in September, our first full month of service, you can see, and in every month since, you can see that we've carried more passengers than Great Lakes at a rate that year over year is increasing by month over the number of passengers that Great Lakes carried. So 2017, September versus September 2018, we carried just over 20% more passengers. Sorry, my eyes are bad. November, 110%, and in December, 145% increase over Great Lakes' passenger counts from December. So about 2.5 times as many passengers. So that is really good news. People are coming back, they're using the service. But what is also really interesting to me about this slide is that you can see that the seasonality trend mirrors Great Lakes almost exactly. So it's great that more people are using the service, and I hope that we will level out the shift in demand by season here. But it also shows us that nothing we can really do in terms of reliability is going, it can't outpace the drop-off in demand that is currently experienced in the winter months. So the upside of all this is that if the current trends continue, we should have an off-the-charts summer. If we carried 2.5 times as many people as Great Lakes did in July, we don't even have enough seats to carry 2.5 times as many people as Great Lakes did in July. So what is driving some of these increases? First of all, our fare structure. I made a commitment to you when I stood here several months ago that we would, one of the benefits of having a 30-passenger aircraft is that you get some economies of scale, and we can offer more seats at lower prices, and we're doing that. Versus where Great Lakes was, we've cut the fare by more than half. And it's also about half of what other cities in the state of Arizona see for nonstop service to Phoenix. We offer what we call our Super Saver fare on our Facebook page. Every Wednesday we pick the flights with the greatest number of unsold seats. We don't want the inventory to spoil. We know that they're going to fly empty at that point. And rather than fly empty, we'd rather make them available to the community at a steep discount for people that can be flexible with their travel plans. 41% of the traffic that we have carried to and from Page has been booked at the Super Saver fare, which in this market is $29 each way. So it is very affordable for people to travel from Page, and I mean, I'm thrilled to see people in the community taking advantage of the service. I want to talk, it's nice to say that we've been reliable, but the numbers prove that. Our on-time performance on the Page route specifically has been 92.3%, which relative to the other airlines' system-wide averages, you can see puts us at top of the pack. In terms of our overall statistics, you can see that we've had 529 segments scheduled. We've had a grand total of 13 cancellations, 6 due to weather. As you guys know, Page experienced some unusual amounts of snowfall here recently. And while the airport did remain open for certain aircraft, and there were some small aircraft landing, I want to make a point of this because I got asked the question, why can one airplane land but another can't? It's because our big 30-passenger jets need a little bit more runway than a King Air to take off and land. So it is not a subjective call made by our pilots, we'll go or we won't go. The weather conditions and the wind, our passenger loads, the fuel on board gets plugged into a computer that says, yes, it is safe to depart, no, it is not safe to depart. And knowing that a lot of the passengers have connections onward in Phoenix and Las Vegas, we'd rather make that call earlier in the day and give people the opportunity to still get to Phoenix to make their flight than wait until departure time and cancel at the last minute if weather conditions haven't improved. So we've had 6 segments, not 6 round trips, so equivalent to 3 round trips canceled due to weather. And we've had a grand total of 7 segments canceled due to a controllable factor. I can tell you all 7 have been due to some maintenance-related factor, many of which have actually been beyond our control, beyond just saying the plane broke. Mike was fortunate enough to be on the aircraft one night when our aircraft was struck by lightning. Getting struck by lightning requires that the aircraft be taken out of service for an inspection. We also recently had a belt loader driven into the side of our aircraft in Phoenix, which also removed the aircraft from service. But we have scrambled in every case to ferry a spare aircraft back out here. and in many cases only missed one, maybe two flights if it happened late in the day, missed the evening flight and then the first flight in the morning, but we're back on schedule by the afternoon. That comes at a significant cost to Contour. Each time we ferry an airplane out here, it's tens of thousands of dollars of fuel, but I want everyone on council to be aware that that's the commitment we're willing to make to keep you guys running on time, on schedule. So overall, controllable completion factor since we began service is almost 98.7%, which is excellent for an EAS community. Probably, certainly in the top 5% of EAS communities, I have to imagine, simply because in most EAS communities, there aren't spare aircraft sitting around. So when an aircraft does experience an issue, it almost always requires a spare aircraft be ferried in and the flight be canceled until the replacement aircraft arrives. So based on everything that we learned about the trends and the seasonality, we've talked a lot about banking flights and what the right number of frequencies is for this market by season. So we've come up with a core schedule for the summer season, which we're going to call April 16th through middle of October, that is really designed to optimize connectivity. One of the issues we have now with the morning flight to Phoenix is that the return flight from Phoenix leaves too early to really capture inbound traffic. So like for me, coming from New York, I can't take the first flight of the day from Phoenix to Page because the first flight from New York doesn't arrive in Phoenix until 10:30 in the morning. So for example, when I came in yesterday, I flew to Las Vegas because the first inbound flight from Las Vegas departed at 12:15 in the afternoon, giving me enough time to get to Las Vegas. So this schedule is optimized for connections by having the departures early enough to get to Las Vegas and Phoenix so people can still make onward connections, and also having the inbound flights to Page a little later in the day to optimize connectivity to give everyone a chance to get to the hub airport to make their connection into Page. This provides for 14 frequencies a week. The Department of Transportation is willing to subsidize on average 12 throughout the year. So this schedule of 14 flights per week would mean that in the off season you need to go down to 10. So we can talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But this schedule for Phoenix is also intentional in that it allows folks commuting in either direction to have a full day of meetings with just one overnight. One of the issues with, say, having an early morning departure to Phoenix and then a late afternoon return is that it's great for the folks that live here that need to go to Phoenix for the day, but it basically forces anyone from Phoenix coming here to have two overnights because they would arrive at night and then the flight back to Phoenix with only one a day, if it was in the morning, would force them to get right back on the plane in the morning. So if they wanted a full day of meetings here, it would require them to spend 2 nights here. So this schedule, having a late afternoon departure and return, allows for a full business day in either direction with just one overnight, and it optimizes the connectivity for tourists through Las Vegas, which is actually an easier airport to connect in because all the terminals are connected post-security, and fares tend to be even lower than they are in Phoenix. Should you guys want it, need it, we can add an early morning departure to Phoenix. That would take on really any day of the week. It would leave Page at 6:30 in the morning and return from Phoenix at 8 a.m. That really would be a schedule primarily for locals, businesses, government officials that need to go back and forth on a Monday morning, for example, to be in Phoenix earlier in the day. But again, that would mean if you add those flights, that frequencies in the winter season need to be reduced further. So that's really the core question, is what is the minimum level of service that the community is willing to accept in the winter, because that will drive how many frequencies we can operate in the summer. Really, I think we could fill even more than 14 frequencies in the summer. But again, it comes at the expense of your winter service. And there are folks, the enplanements might not be there in the winter, but we recognize that the service is filling a need to move teachers, doctors, people vital to the economy of Page, even in the off-season. And so I defer to your judgment when it comes to making that decision. So I hope that provided a succinct enough overview to at least foster some dialogue about what you all would like to do moving forward.
Thank you, Matt. So one of the questions we have to decide is what's the minimum level of service during the wintertime?
Matt, can you tell us currently where we're at on our frequencies right now for Phoenix?
Sure. Right now we're at 9 per week.
Okay.
Now, remember, the grant was from July 1st through June 30th. We did not start service until August 15th. So because there was a month and a half's worth of grant money that basically was available, we've been able to maintain a higher level of frequencies through the winter season because we didn't start flying until 45 days into the grant period. So the amount of the grant was fixed, and we thought it prudent to put the frequencies out there to really understand what people are doing, what the travel patterns are, because when you reduce frequency, it's very hard to understand what people actually would do if the service existed. It's one of the things that we've seen from Vegas. I strongly recommend moving Vegas to daily service for the summer, but Vegas, to this point, has slightly lagged Phoenix in terms of performance. That's normal, that's what I would expect, because the Las Vegas service only operates 3 days per week. When you only operate service 3 days per week or less than daily, you're forcing people onto your schedule. And for anyone that can't go on a Tuesday and come back on a Thursday or Thursday to a Sunday, the 3 days a week that we fly, you're forcing them into a car. So typically, when you have daily service, you see better load factors as long as the demand is actually there. And I do believe it is, because on inbound traffic, the load factor to Las Vegas is pretty much matured to the point where Phoenix is. So remember, Vegas started later than Phoenix did as well, so the market has taken a little bit more time to develop, or isn't as far along in its development as Phoenix. So for Vegas to be where Phoenix is in terms of inbound traffic, I think speaks to the fact that that is a very viable connection point that warrants the additional service. So right now you're at 12. To answer, that was a long way of answering your question. You're currently at 12 flights, 12 frequencies a week, 9 to Phoenix and 3 to Las Vegas.
Okay, so we're using our quota right now.
You are using your quota, but again, because we didn't start service for the first 45 days, even using the 12 all the way through June 30th, which is the end of the first grant period, you won't have exhausted all of the subsidy money available to you. So, for example, the flights that we're adding, and I do think it's worth doing so, I can put in extra flights for you. In fact, I've added a early Monday morning flight and an early Friday morning flight because you have grant money, again, for this period through June 30th, 2019, available. So after June 30th, the grant period resets. You have the same amount of annual subsidy available, but it's for July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. So we can adjust accordingly from July 1st onward, but for the time being, we do think that there is room in the schedule to add some additional frequencies through June 30th. So I would say focus more on July 1st and onward and what you would like to see from July into October, and then again, knowing that when next spring comes around, the average number of flights per week over the course of the year from July 1st through June 30th needs to be about 12.
Do we have enough in the bank to offer daily service to Vegas beginning with this summer core schedule that you're promoting?
Yes.
Okay. And then so our decision really is what we do next winter beginning mid-October through April.
Exactly, because that will affect not only how many flights we put in the schedule from July 1st through mid-October, but also how many flights we can put into the schedule from, say, mid-April of 2020 through June 30th of 2020.
So if we did 14 flights per week starting July, then in the winter time we would have to drop down to 10.
Correct.
So then subsequently, if we did 16, we'd drop down to 8.
Correct.
Okay.
So we were discussing that, I have a hard time having less than one a day get out of Phoenix, but then we were discussing Saturday's their lowest day, because if you fly somewhere, you're usually there for a Saturday, and that's usually not a business travel day, Saturday, for appointments. So it would be possible to go down to 6 if we took out Saturday, but also have later flight times on those once a day so that you can catch those connecting flight times.
When we were originally envisioning this, and we were talking about Las Vegas, I think there's still a question to be answered. That Las Vegas clientele tends to be more tourist-based versus Phoenix is more business and government-based. And Las Vegas, in many ways, fits what we're doing here as a community better. But we're never going to know really what that connection is going to do until we run it 7 days and give people opportunity to have flexibility from Vegas. So I think we're going to have to take a bold step at some point and say, let's run Vegas for 7 days for a period just to see what it is, see what it brings back.
And this data will show that most of Vegas traffic is tourism, whereas
And you have the opportunity to do that starting mid-April now with the extra funds. So you could go from mid-April to late June.
The one other thing that I think is worth pointing out is the actual allocation of frequencies between the two cities does not need to be decided now for the fall and winter period of 2019 going into 2020. I have purposely only released the schedule 90 days at a time because I didn't want to put out a schedule for this summer when we first started, not knowing which market was going to be strongest, what the day of week demand was, what really the seasonality would be. So, you have the money for additional frequencies through June 30th, and I would recommend that you allow us to plug in the additional frequencies as we see fit. I think I've added a Thursday and Sunday flight in the morning to Phoenix for you, and a Monday and Friday flight to Las Vegas for you through April 15th because the money is available for it. And, the government's not, it's yours. I mean, it's been allocated to the grant, so might as well use it to get people here. But I would say that at this point, it's worth probably publishing a schedule through October. I'd like to give people a longer booking window now that we have some data. But you don't need to worry about how many cities and the timing of flights for October 16th just yet. We can have a discussion again in another few months, say in April, once we see once we have some data about how Las Vegas is booking once it's moved to daily service, and then make a decision, okay, how many flights are we going to go down to in the winter? Because remember, you still have the back end, the spring season of 2020 available to adjust frequencies as well. So really the only thing that needs to be decided today for sure is how many frequencies you would like to operate from, say, July 1st through October. And then we can fill in the back end of winter and spring once we gather some additional information. So at a minimum, I would say this is probably the right schedule. If you did this would be 14 weekly flights. And if I had to guess, just kind of to give you a marker to keep in the back of your mind, I would say that in winter you could go to 6 weekly round trips to Phoenix and 4 to Las Vegas. So that would give you service every day of the week, but Saturday to Phoenix, and I would put the Vegas frequencies on the high demand days, which are typically Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Monday. I think that captures Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Monday are the typically the biggest days for leisure travel. You can do a long weekend with that, Thursday to Sunday or Friday to Monday. That would be my recommendation. But again, it's all contingent on what you guys are willing to live with, worst case scenario in the winter.
I certainly support daily service to Vegas. I think that's going to be our home run market, to be honest with you. I think it's going to surpass Phoenix. I think the demand has shown that in the summer particularly that's going to be it. My question would be, optimistically, where are we at when we fill capacity? At what point do we reach a saturation? And then what is a contingency to meet the over demand should that occur?
It's a very good question. The subsidy is finite, right? But we're in business to make money. And as long as we felt like the demand and the price that people were willing to pay could result in unsubsidized flights, I'm certainly willing to operate them. We started as the decline in traffic typically begins. I mean, we started service late August on 2 weeks' notice because of the timing of the emergency award. So we didn't really have time to capture the peak season. So I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you that if we were to add any at-risk frequencies, it wouldn't be for $29, $49, $69. We could try to blend it across all of the flights, the increase, to basically give you guys more capacity but raise the fares across the board. But the fares are really what's stimulating a lot of the demand right now. We will, if we can do it and make money doing it and have additional at-risk frequencies, I'm happy to do it. And I don't want you guys to think that those are empty words, because I said the same thing to Crescent City, California, and it's not public yet, so don't send this video to Crescent City yet. But summer for them was so strong, their flights were in excess of 90% full, that I'm adding some additional flights for them from Memorial Day to Labor Day to help them get to 10,000 enplanements this year. So, again, if the model warrants it, the amount of demand and the price that people are willing to pay can justify at-risk flights for us, I'm happy to do it.
I have a question for you, sir. When it comes to, and I know you don't have the data for Contour yet because of when Contour started. Just out of curiosity, do you know how many passengers you have that go to Phoenix or come from Phoenix to Page for, let's say, the hospital, or as teachers for work? Do you by any chance know that? I know teachers generally during the summer wouldn't.
I don't have it by type of travel. What I could run a report if the doctors or the teachers that are coming every week are booking through a travel agency affiliated with their institution, I can run a report to see how many bookings have been generated by that agency. Most big corporations have a corporate travel agency, or they book through Concur and it's filled through a travel agency that has an identifier in their bookings. So that would probably be the only way that I would have access to that data, or to give you some semblance of an idea of just how much they represent of the traffic.
Okay, because I do agree that yes, Las Vegas is a market that we definitely need to be in, but I don't want us to forget that the reason for the service is, like you said, to bring professionals here, to bring, the necessary services here. And I don't want those that are using it for that purpose to get lost.
The
and that's my
decision
concern.
that results in the greatest number of enplanements may not be the decision that actually best meets the needs of the community, and that's why I wanted to give you the options. Knowing that there are teachers and doctors using this service, it may be worth sacrificing some capacity in the summer to keep that service going at an acceptable frequency in the winter.
Okay.
I do think if you think that they can make use of, a daily round trip to Phoenix that gives them the ability to do one round trip and to spend one overnight and have a full day in either city. Think about if they were starting work Monday morning, they could take the Sunday night flight. Not ideal, for people that didn't want to leave their family until Monday morning, but it saves them a 4.5, 5-hour drive. And they could get home to their families Thursday night or Friday night, and in either direction. So, you start cutting too much more than, I don't know how much more than that I would recommend cutting. I think the service starts to lose its utility when you get down below that.
Sounds like your suggestion of the 1410 for right now is the only way to go until we got more statistics, and then we can decide from there.
I would agree with that. I think it's a prudent move. And the other thing is that it doesn't necessarily have to be 6 months at 14, 6 months at 10. We can drop down to 12 and 12 during shoulder season. We have a lot of flexibility here. That's the beauty of the alternate EAS program. It's not 2 flights a day from here to here and 4 flights a day, from a period that the DOT defines.
But from my standpoint, you're the professional, and you forgot more about routes and schedules and traffic patterns than I know. So I would follow your recommendation on this, and with the caveat that I really want to maximize the benefit we have to the Las Vegas market. And I don't know that, I'd cut back to Phoenix to the point where in the winter it sustains that level of travel, but as we see just basically on the complainants, it doesn't justify the loss of the revenue that we would receive as a community as a whole in the summer, additional flights from Vegas. I mean, it doesn't make sense to have an airplane with 4 people on it in the middle of January.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
So, I mean, you've got a 30-seat airplane. We need to maximize that to the fullest capacity in the summertime when the market is there to be taken. But continue the reliable service we have now to Phoenix, but on the most minimal basis that we can use to capitalize in the summer.
I am very optimistic about Vegas. We are certainly incentivized, A, to operate every flight that's scheduled, and B, to maximize, our fare structure is set, but the more people we put on the airplanes, the more money we make. So we're incentivized to put the planes where it's going to run the fullest, but I wanted to be very transparent and give you guys options. And I think if I can know in the back of my mind that you're comfortable going to 6 frequencies a day in the winter in Phoenix, not saying that's set in stone, but just knowing that that's what I have to play with from here on, I can manage the schedule. I'm certainly happy to, but we don't even have to have a discussion about banking frequencies. And I can manage it for you to that point so that you use all of the subsidy available. You still have minimum acceptable level of service. And I mean, I'm looking at booking reports every day to see what the trends are. And so we can react very quickly to plug flights in as needed on peak days and peak months. And I would say, if you allow us to revenue manage it in the way we would an at-risk route that wasn't subsidized, I think our objectives are totally aligned.
This is a discussion item only.
All right, and I wanted to add, you shared some information about how many cities you've added recently, how many planes you've added, and you're adding I don't know, you call it emergency plane.
Yeah.
Share those 3 details.
So again, I just want to thank Council again for placing their trust in Contour. Page was the 4th essential air service city to select Contour. Since then, we've added 3 more. one in Missouri going to St. Louis, which is an ex-American Airlines hub, post-TWA, and 2 in West Virginia going to Charlotte, also an American Airlines hub. So as we grow, it's strengthening our case for baggage interline agreements to allow connectivity. Phoenix presents a problem even with an interline agreement because none of the terminals are connected post-security, which is, again, another reason why I think Vegas works so well as a connecting point, because those with carry-on baggage don't have to leave security. They can go straight to their next gate. But we are growing our West Coast network. We'll be adding a 3rd based airplane on the West Coast here probably in the spring. And once we're at 3 flying airplanes each day, we'll also be basing a 4th airplane here to serve as nothing but a spare. So that will help me and it will help you, because I won't have to pay for fuel to fly an airplane empty from Tennessee to Arizona or California anytime something goes wrong. And it means that we can get here faster when something does go wrong with a recovery aircraft.
Levi, I misspoke. Do we require action on this?
Not required, but you do have the option.
I'd
Council
I'd
comfortable,
propose
or
to
you wanna-
make a motion to direct staff to work with Contour at their discretion to maximize the marketability of the summer market and go to the minimum recommended flights in the winter to Phoenix.
Second.
Motion and second. So those would be, that minimum would be 6. Minimum acceptable level to Phoenix. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Matt in.
All right, item number 4, discussion and possible action by City Council pertaining to rodeo grounds in City of Page. Turn this over to City Manager.
Mayor, Council, we have had many discussions on this with the Young family, and it sort of has been moving. It's a moving project at this point, and I'm going to have Tim Swan come up here, as he's been working with the Young family and with Michelle on other options that they might be considering as a result of the corrals and the next steps moving forward. Tim?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Tim Swan, Community Development Director. I'd like to introduce you here in a moment to Ms. Michelle Monroe on behalf of the Young family behind me. She's been introduced to you before and had a brief presentation on what their outlook was for the future of a rodeo grounds. So staff and I had worked with Michelle very closely and presented several options that were all actually city pieces of property, and tried to maximize what they've seen and what they've envisioned for their project that would include an enhancement of potential entertainment services and things like that that have been a priority for this community here to expand those options of entertainment altogether. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Michelle now, and she'll go ahead and, if that's appropriate, to give a presentation on what their vision is.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Again, my name is Michelle Monroe. I am representing my parents, Kenneth and Emily Young. They currently own the Ken's Tours at Lower Antelope Canyon, and the rodeo grounds is something near and dear to us. It's something that we that is very much part of our daily lives away from our business. So I just kind of wanted to share with you a little bit about our history. If I can get this to work. Okay. So we have a long history with the actual Vermilion Cliffs that's there now. In recent years, especially in the past 5 years, consistently, we have put on different rodeos and hosted different events there. The Indian National Finals Rodeo is huge. That is nationwide and also includes Canada. So they have tour rodeos at different stops across the nation, and we have held 2 here for INFR in 2017 and also 2018. We also have held the Page Lake Powell Rodeo annually since 2014. And that's a nice event that the community businesses really love to take part in and support. The Western Junior Rodeo is a rodeo association on this side of the region of the Navajo Nation. Kids as young as 5 years old all the way up to 19 years old take part in this, so it's a nice family event. And we have done those rodeos 2013, 14, and 15. And we've also assisted with other various events, helped sponsor them or helped host them. At the Key Ranch, when I talk about Key Ranch, that's the Kenneth and Emily Young Ranch down at Antelope Point Marina, towards Antelope Point Marina. We have put on several events. We have a very successful annual bull riding that we hold there in October every year, the first Saturday of October. This year will be our 19th year doing that, and it's very successful, sold out. We have a very good time. We also put on bull riding series and separate bull riding events. The timed event challenge series are in the springtime, and then jackpots. So we put on events here in the city, and we also do back home also at Key Ranch. So with our history, we have a lot of good experience with producing rodeos, seeking sponsorship, and just having the right personnel in place to put on wonderful and successful events. And this is just a little slide to show you our flyer for the Page Lake Powell Rodeo Days. Again, you know, with this kind of a rodeo, we get between 140 to 200 contestants, and that's a lot of people for a rodeo this size. Brings lots of family members, supporting visitors. The spectators love it, so it's a good event. This one here is the Ainafar Tour Rodeo that I mentioned that, you know, the tour stops are all over across the United States and Canada, so we have that here. Hopefully we'll be able to do our third one, which we are planning on doing it, the third one this year. But the first two years that we have held it, we were in the top 5 voted for the Ainafar, so it was nice. So rodeos bring people in business. Our contestant numbers can reach between 150 to 500 and more, depending on the kind of event that you put up. Rodeo is also family oriented, so we have, you know, families, aunts and uncles, grandmas and grandpas come out. And then the visitors stay longer in Page with these kind of events because usually they're, you know, expand a whole weekend or sometimes a week long. Page is an ideal place for rodeo events. We could, just as far as ideas, could put an annual community rodeo. Mayor talked this morning about doing more festivals here in this town. This would be a great avenue for that. The World Series team roping is huge. Sometimes, well, on average, you can see 500 teams, but most of the times they're like 900 plus. Community jackpots, challenge series. With what we have in mind, we could even also extend as far as having professional events here, like the PRCA or the PBR. And one of the big things that we're excited about doing, if we pursue this, is having a weekly rodeo series in the summer. We could also bid for finals to be held here. So a lot of these associations locally and regionally, they have a year-end finals. For example, the Senior Pro Rodeo, the Navajo Nation Rodeo Association, the All Indian Rodeo Cowboys Association, the Western Junior Arizona High School Rodeo. Those would be really nice to have here. It's also an ideal place to hold clinics. So it's not just rodeos, but we can also do other equestrian events. Clinics for horsemanship, barrel racing, roping, youth events, and any other agricultural events. The weekly night rodeos, I think this would be great to have here. So during the day here in Page, people have a lot of things to do. They can go hiking, they go out on the lake, they can see Horseshoe Bend, but in the evenings and night times, there's not much for them to do here. So most of the time, people come to this town and they're on their way back out once they see the highlights. But having a weekly night rodeo, I think, would really help to bring people here and have them stay a night or two to check out what we have in the evenings. So what could that look like? We could do like a rodeo every Thursday night, 7 p.m., have a wonderful, colorful, grand entry, fun, action-packed event. Nice concession stands. We could even showcase several restaurants, you know, on a weekly basis. They could have their concessions set up. It allows an avenue for local participants, local cowboys and cowgirls that can enter like at a jackpot price, so we have the contestants that can put on the show. Entertainment is also there for the whole family to enjoy. Just to give you an idea, there's a lot of towns across the United States that do a weekly rodeo. This one here is in New Jersey. They do a weekly rodeo from May 26th to September 29th. We also have Jackson Hole that do, mid-May to mid-September. Stockyards Championship Rodeo, that's in Fort Worth, Texas. They do every Friday and Saturday night at 8 p.m. Here in Arizona at Cave Creek, the Buffalo Chip, they do bull ridings every Wednesday and Friday. Cody Night Rodeo, this is the big one. I think was the most successful of its kind. I've been there and they get lots of people there, busloads of people, busloads of tourists, and it's a really nice time. Locally, Bryce Canyon even has a night rodeo at Ruby's Inn. I think they do Saturday, Memorial Day to mid of August. So as Tim had mentioned, we had looked at different options for the rodeo grounds and what other opportunities we could entertain. Just to kind of give you a background, we had started on a business site lease on the Navajo Nation at Key Ranch, my parents' place, but it's a long and arduous process that can take up to 10 years. So when we heard about the rodeo grounds having possibilities of expansion or something else to be done, we decided to pursue this opportunity with the city and see what we can do here, because we want to continue having events like these here in Page and explore what we can do on a more frequent basis for the community and also for the visitors that come here. So we halted our process with the business site lease with the Navajo Nation, and we're looking to see what we can do here. Just to give you an idea, this is a picture of South Buckeye Equestrian Center in Buckeye. And it has a covered arena, several other arenas, and then over here on the left-hand side in the corner is kind of like an RV hookup place where people can put their trailers and hook up to electricity and water. Also on the top right-hand corner is a tack and feed store and a saloon, boarding facilities, all there. We have been there several times and we really like that facility. This is a picture of the covered arena at Queen Creek, and it's a really nice, fairly new. They hold a lot of events there. This is something we're looking at doing here. So looking forward, one of the options we want to do is purchase a land, maybe near the industrial park, to build a new equestrian facility. It would include 2 arenas, one covered, one uncovered. That is so that we can have events like the team roping events that have the 900 plus teams. We need something that can hold those kind of events here. A horse boarding facility, because I know currently we have horse boarders. We want to make sure we keep that service available. So looking at 60 to 100 units, a tack and feed store, concession areas, RV hookups, and of course the parking for the events that we hold. It's kind of hard to see, but these are slides of what we were going to do at Key Ranch if we had pursued our business lease with the Navajo Nation. But it kind of just gives you an idea what could be possible. So if you take a look at that bright orange square in the middle, that would be the covered arena and an opened arena right next to it. Plenty of parking space. There's areas there for a concession, the little smaller orange rectangular areas. And also on the very left-hand side is the RV hookup area for the contestants and visitors. And that's just another slide to show you what it would look like. I think that shows it pretty nicely. So there, between the trees would be the entrance where the spectators would come in to buy their ticket to go into the facility. So the covered area is very nice because it is very hot here in the summertime, and it also can hold a lot more people than the uncovered arenas. So kind of a nice park area, really upgrade the kind of facilities that we would want to put into place here in this town. And that's underneath the covered arena. I mean, it wouldn't look exactly like this, but this is to give you an idea of what we have in mind. I think that's all I have.
So, excuse me. So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if there's any dialogue that you'd like to, address right now, if the council may so please, Michelle is here to answer any questions.
So this went before the Parks Board, and originally we were looking at a solution for the horse corrals, the current corrals that are kind of in the middle of residential, and their original plans. Correct me if I'm wrong, but their original plans were a lot bigger than that area would hold. So we had them talk to Tim and say, there's other property that we own. If we don't want to shrink your vision. We want you to.
Right. So the slides that I showed, that was for 47 acres, but I believe the current rodeo grounds is about 25 acres. So it's half the size of what we were looking at and envisioning.
We want them to go bigger and bold.
Bigger and better.
So where is this potential land?
Oh, there's that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There it is. So that's 98 coming across there, and industrial park is behind the white circle there. So there's a little Mesa Butte between that, and then there's open land. That tells you where that's. So it gets the rodeo on the main 98 drag for visibility, but it puts the facilities south of that 98, so that the trails and everything through that Big 5 wash area, their horses aren't having to cross that road. But anyways, this is their presentation, and it's on an executive session, so we don't have to make any decisions.
It's currently future development.
It probably is. It would probably require zoning.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you'll have a packet that'll have all this information, including zoning, and we can discuss future entitlements as well.
For me, I love the concept of having some activities during the night. We sorely need that in the community. I know in my business, I struggle to keep my people, my visitors happy at night. So we definitely need this. So I think it's a great project.
I think it'll be great for the youth in our town as well. It'll give them something extra to do at night other than sit around and play video games.
Yeah, I love the idea of a weekly rodeo. So really, this was just a presentation to show you guys what their vision is. If there's any more questions.
Thank you.
Good.
Mayor,
Thank you.
if it's all possible, the timing, Michelle, is there a certain time frame you're looking at?
Well, it's basically up to the decision from the city. So we're ready to go forward with plans as soon as we're able to get the okay to move forward.
Thank you.
So, and the like I said, the Parks and Rec Board unanimously voted to do a purchase for this particular activity. So, really, when we'll discuss it in executive session, but then there'll be the normal government process to announce it to the public. But we want to, or personally, I want to move it forward as soon as possible. So.
Real quick question for you, Michelle. If this were approved, once all the, as Mayor Tappan just said, all the governmental stuff is taken care of, how long from breaking ground to up and running? Just off the cuff.
I mean, we'll have to make sure we get an architect out there and a team to look at the land and see what kind of things need to be done. But as far as funding and just the plans we want to go forward with, we're ready to go ahead and get started. So it's basically just to see what is available there. I know there's water and electricity to look at, sewage, those kind of things also. And then also making sure that the ground is good and ready for building. So those will all come into place and in phases once we get started with the teams that need to be in place for construction.
So, would it take about a year? 6 months? Once all of that is taken care of? I'm just wondering when you would be opening your doors.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's going to be in phases. I mean, rodeo ground is real easy to put up. So
Wonderful.
We have
Wonderful.
several down at the ranch, and they're, you can start into phases and be ready for business while you're getting everything else builded. So.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you.
I made one question. Michelle, what would your phasing look like in terms of the priority use first? Where would you begin and see the first active construction, and how would you progress into the final phase?
So I would imagine that we would want to make sure that we are going to be having the rodeo grounds in place so we can start to have these events to, kind of get that business going. And also making sure we get the stalls in place for the people that are boarding their horses there so we can get them moved over, because I know there's plans in place or, potential things that want to be put into place at the current area. So I would say that the rodeo grounds will be first, and then the stalls for the horse boarding, and then the buildings can come after that. But it will have to also, pertain to whatever the architecture and the teams with the construction will advise us as.
I guess where I'm going with that is the outline, Tim, you show 87.4 acres, is that correct?
Yeah, you asked for 45, but this says 87.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, great question. So what you see in front of you is an approximation. So we actually have more than that number of acreage available. What would happen is we would, the applicant would conduct a survey of what the actual land they would propose to develop on. So it would be fine-tuned to them. At this point right now is more of a generalization and broad terms on what the heart of this project truly is. And if you're able to continue at least moving in this direction, then we can get the finite details as well as what Michelle spoke on in terms of the exact phasing and build out and infrastructure and other things like that. But the general heart and the general location is sort of what I want to propose to you to see if you're comfortable moving on.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle, if you don't mind, the other thing I might just ask you to consider when you're designing this or looking at it is, would there be opportunity for alternative events or other events other than rodeo? I have ideas. Comes to, it's a large piece of dirt. I'm thinking, could you have a fair? Could you have some 4-H
Definitely.
cooperation?
Yeah.
I'm just curious if you guys have thought that way or not.
Yeah, that's kind of like further down, but definitely we want to make sure it's an area where we can hold a fair, maybe like a pavilion and place where we can bring carnivals or powwows, arts fair, different kind of events.
Okay, I think that'd be
Definitely, yes.
real positive if you could kind of open the vision up and keep that place busy, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
For the horse boarding, how would the price compare for the people who are boarding their horses now?
Well, that's kind of hard for me to say, to see, what kind of area we'll have developed for them. Definitely be more uniform than what it is now. Right now you have all sorts of different sizes of pins, no shade and things like that. So it'll be an upgrade from what they have now. We'll have to also make sure we have certain rules into place with the health of the animals that they keep there. So it's hard for me to say that now. We don't have those plans down currently.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on to number 5, policy discussion pertaining to purchase of a 14-yard dump truck for public works. Mr. Jansen.
Good evening, Mayor
Good to see
Tappan,
you.
members of the Page City Council. What you have before you is a information pertaining to, just as you stated, a purchase of a 2005 International 14-yard dump truck. Kind of fill you in on some background. If you recall, back in the August 29th, 2018 City Council meeting, the City Council made a motion and approved that motion, purchase of a 12-yard cubic dump truck from ADOT surplus via publicsurplus.com, and in the amount of $30,000. At the time when the motion was approved, there was one truck. We had anticipated additional trucks, but ADOT had one truck available, and it got snatched up before we could actually make a purchase on that. In discussions with their fleet management and their surplus management, they do not have a release of their next run of used dump trucks on the horizon, perhaps in 2 years. Currently, they're focused on purchasing and assisting the state in purchasing school buses for different school districts throughout the state. So what Public Works has done in lieu of that is we began kind of scouring the postings and talking to different vendors, seeing what was available out there, kind of in that same range, shooting for that $30,000 range. Unfortunately, we weren't able to find anything that was comparable to what we were looking at, but we did come across a few other trucks. And what we did locate a dump truck with United Rentals in Phoenix. And in your council communication here, it does identify a 2005 International 7400 14-yard dump truck. After reviewing some of the information, we made the council communication. We identified that truck is actually a 7600, and a 2005 International 7600 for the same cost. That was a clerical error on United Rentals' side. The difference between a 7400 and a 7600 is about 30,000 pounds on the GVWR rating, so it actually can hold a lot more material for us. So with an approval, we're anticipating purchasing this truck at $41,401.38, and that includes all sales tax. It is a purchase from an Arizona vendor. And as you know, we do have in the budget that line item $75,000 for the purchase towards a used truck. So we're going to be still not as great as a $30,000 truck as we'd hoped for. We're still going to leave a considerable amount of money for use in other capital improvement projects, or as the City Council desires. So with that, I entertain any questions.
I move to approve the purchase of a 2005 International 7400 14-yard dump truck from United Rentals for $41,401.38.
It's a 7600.
Yeah, so, yeah.
7600
Thank you.
14-yard dump truck. Sorry, it says 74, but you're right. You
Yes.
just said that, sorry.
I appreciate your patience with that.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any more discussion? Thank you, Kyle. We told you to save us some money, and you went out and
Fine.
saved us some money. So,
Try it.
more discussion? All right, all those in favor of purchasing the 7600 14-yard dump truck, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Kyle.
Thank you for coming tonight. It's a discussion of possible action pertaining to the 2019 recreational agreement with the Page Little League Association. Jackie?
Good evening, Mayor Tappan and council members. I'd like to give you a little bit of background that before last year in 2018, that the city ran the girls softball program and Little League offered baseball for boys. So what that meant is if you have girls and boys in your family, you needed to sign up for 2 different programs, and the games and practices would be in 2 different locations. And the city as well as Little League, and just so I can let you know that Trent Sutherland, he's the president for the Little League Association, he's here, so if you do have questions later, that he's available as well, that we got complaints that we're driving our kids here and here, we can't watch all the games, go to all the practices. So last year that we worked with Little League to see what could we do that would benefit our community and have all of the softball and baseball under one organization and located at one place. And last year we brought this to you for the first time, asking if we could go ahead and enter into an agreement to have Little League operate the program. They took care of registration, coaches, referees, all of that, and the city provide the facility. And last year, there were 310, is that right, Trent? 310 participants in the Little League program of both boys and girls using our facility. They were filled up. I don't know if any of you were there, that the fields were busy compared to the previous year when the city had softball only. There were only 21 girls signed up and the rest of the fields were empty. So what we'd like to ask is to enter into agreement this year again with Little League.
And again, I think this is another great partnership. I'm glad we got them on those beautiful fields.
See, it's a success, that's for sure. Increase the usage of the facility. I would imagine it's a lot more convenient for the families as well.
Yes.
It doesn't divide up the participation either, so one year I think there's 3 teams that end up playing each other every week. So I'm looking for a motion.
Move to approve the 2019 recreation agreement with Page Little League Association.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sutherland, for sitting through to that. Item number 7, discussion possible action by City Council pertaining to an amendment to the city's purchasing procedures. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is kind of a recommended update to our purchasing procedures. It addresses several issues that we, as staff, have encountered, some cleanup things as well. Kind of what prompted this, just for the information of council, was a question about that contract that we approved with Lake Powell Construction. Generally, we require, the state statutes generally require that we have payment and performance bonds for all of our construction projects. They also allow us to adopt some rules that allow that would permit us to waive that in projects under $100,000, but we didn't have those rules adopted. So there was a question as to whether or not we could waive it to save some money on this project, since it was a fairly small project. And we've run into this issue in the past with other small construction projects and contractors who may not want to bid because they don't want to go through the hassle, or it costs money and those types of things. So one of the things that this does is to adopt specific rules that allows the city to waive payment and performance bond. Doesn't require it, but allows us to waive that in construction projects of $100,000 or less. While I was making those changes, I decided to, if we're going to be modifying it, just to kind of throw in the kitchen sink with all of the issues, like I say, that we've encountered in the past. So what some of the highlights here of what this does, first of all, just kind of going through, starting at the top and moving down, it would raise the spending limit for the city manager from $10,000 to $20,000. And the reason that staff picked $20,000 is to essentially come in line with how things operate under PUE and with the general manager at PUE. And so that's one thing that this does. Moving down into what would now be subsection C for purchases over $20,000. As we saw tonight, sometimes buying used vehicles and equipment and even new vehicles can be a little bit tricky, and doesn't really lend itself well to the traditional invitation for bids process, where you publish it in the newspaper and say, by the time you get bids back, a lot of the time the equipment's already gone, and then you have to come back to council and okay, now we have to re-advertise, and it doesn't work well for used equipment. So what this would allow is for used equipment and those types of things that department could make a written request to the city manager to allow to make those kinds of purchases. Obviously, if it's over 20,000, it would still need council approval, but it would allow us to do it without going through a traditional invitation for bid type process. Would allow us to get quotes and come to the council for quicker approval on those types of things, instead of advertising for 30 days and then opening bids and going through that type of a process. The other thing that we've had issues with in the past is that we don't really have a set of rules at all to deal with some issues that may arise when bidding projects. Late bids, we've had issues where we'll have a mathematical error in a bid, and we don't really have rules as to how we deal with that. We can certainly put that in the specs for each project, but it's easier for us and for consistency and for the public and businesses out there dealing with the city if they know what the rules are ahead of time. And so this would provide some guidance in those types of things. Specifically listed some exemptions. Right now we only have a professional services exemption, but this would expand on that to allow for exemptions from bidding. Again, you're not required. We can still bid if there's a need, but for example, for works of art, advertisements in magazines, public utility purchases of water, electricity, those types of things, we don't go to bid for those types of things now, and it doesn't really make sense that we would want to. So just to codify that, hey, those are exempt and maybe exempt from the competitive bidding process in situations where it makes sense. So that's kind of a summary of the recommended changes that you have. I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has any questions.
I'm not sure that I agree with the one-size-fits-all ordinance. I see the need to certainly have the ability to waive the bond for $100,000 jobs and less. I see the need to provide some flexibility in the way we go about procuring used equipment and things like that. I'm not yet ready to raise our spending limit to $20,000. I don't see city operations in the same light as I see the utility operations. I think utility operates on a basis that has very strong need for perhaps emergency purchases of equipment that puts people back in service. We don't have that. We operate in a municipality. We have plenty of time to review and agree on high dollar purchases. $10,000 is a lot of money. $20,000 is twice that much money. And I'm not ready to go down that road yet. We can always do it later on, but once we do it, we can't take it back.
Thank you. Any other?
What would the benefit be to increasing the spending limit to $20,000? Have there been instances where that would have been more beneficial rather than waiting for the council?
Well, and I guess it kind of depends on how you define beneficial. It's a little subjective, but I guess the potential benefit would be it would, in certain instances, it would streamline purchases so that it wouldn't have to come to wait for council approval, and it would take those types of things if council didn't want to concern themselves with purchases in that range. It would take it off of the agenda. But really, it's primarily a timing thing, and it's really just a philosophical question, a policy question of the council as to how much they want to be involved in and what their comfort level is at what spending level. Obviously, if it raises, then it takes certain things off the agenda. All those purchases between $10,000 and $20,000 would no longer have to come before the city council, and staff could move on those quicker than having to wait. But it's really just a policy question. You know, if council wants to see those and approve those, then we continue to bring them.
I know that, been there, done that. I'm not very comfortable with it either. I know that when we gave Brian Hill that, it was because he took on 2 more utilities, and because of this, the equipment and stuff at the sewer plants and stuff, there was some stuff that had to be, decisions had to be made right at the spot moment, and made sense for him to do it. But with the turnover we have with the managers and stuff, I'm not comfortable with giving him $20,000, because we don't know who's going to be the next manager. I mean, I've been at 20 years. I've been through 15 managers.
I don't know who to address, if it's Mayor Tappan or Mr. Smith. One thing I would like to propose is that no matter how we decide on this, I would like to add language that eliminates circumventing of that dollar amount by breaking up into different purchase orders. So I don't know how to propose that.
Well, I think do you have some language?
Yes.
So once we have a motion, then we can
okay.
put that in there.
I'd
I can
personally like to see this brought back with, like I said, I don't like the one size fits all. I like the idea that you've looked at it all, but I don't think this is a one vote in a global.
No, I think and it doesn't have to be a take it or leave it proposition. I think, you know, certainly I can bring it back, or you could make a motion to amend certain things and pass it that way. But whatever's cleanest and easiest, certainly I would appreciate any direction about what council is comfortable with, so that it could bring back a draft that incorporates the changes that council's comfortable with, and leaving and you know, maybe leaving certain things the same, or you know, if the council's comfortable with everything except for the $20,000 change, then you know, that's easy. I just leave that other language the same and go from there. Or if it's, you know, well, we want to add the language that Council Member Bowlby wants to add, but not mess with the 10,000, leave it at 10,000. All the other changes are okay. That would be the kind of direction, you know, that I would hope to be able to get.
It sounded like it was just the 20,000. There's a sticking point.
That's all. Yeah, and I like Teresa's suggestion as well. It's a good.
Make a motion so we can move on.
So yeah, I mean I do like having the city on par with the utility, but I agree if you're not comfortable yet, we don't want to move there. So
I don't think we need a motion. I think we just need to direct him to bring it back.
I can do that. I'll 10,000 with the language that I sent to Teresa, and we can bring it back at the next meeting.
Okay, we will have no action then. Item number 8, discussion possible action pertaining to modifying the city council's meeting procedures. So I've asked staff to help us run these meetings a little more smoothly, and so that we don't have to keep moving around those executive sessions. So Mr. Smith looked at our ordinance, and he has some suggestions that will help us be more flexible. So if you want to.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So yeah, primarily this does 3 things. The first major changes to the regular meetings. It still sets kind of a standard of the second and fourth Wednesdays of each month at 6:30 in council chambers. That's kind of the default. But it does allow for more flexibility if there's around a holiday or something like that, and there's just not much the city council could say, you know what, we're not even going to have that meeting. The way our current code is drafted, it requires you to have another meeting within 7 days, and so sometimes that becomes a little bit tricky trying to schedule that in as well. So that provides some flexibility. The other was, for whatever reason, we had codified the order of business for the agenda, and it required that we have all of these things on there, whether or not the council had that type of business to address or they wanted to address it. And so the idea was to provide some flexibility and again, just allow the agenda kind of as each new mayor or and the council would like to see the order of business and those types of things instead of being locked into a code that requires us to have an agenda that's 2 pages long, even though there's only a couple of items of business.
And it also makes it easier to move meetings around for the League of Cities, holidays, and in December we traditionally move meetings around. This makes it a lot cleaner and easier to do that.
Move to introduce ordinance 654-19 by title.
Sorry, before you do, I'm going to ask the clerk to introduce. We've changed our order a little bit here.
An ordinance of the mayor and city council of the city of Page, Coconino County, Arizona, amending the city of Page Code of Ordinances 30.50 regular meetings, 30.054 agenda, and 30.055 order of business.
Move to adopt ordinance number 654-19.
Second.
More discussion? Motion to adopt ordinance 654-19. I'll say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you for that. That's going to help me streamline our meetings and hopefully get us home a little earlier. But not tonight. Item number 9, discussion possible action pertaining to update to the Page Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. I believe.
Actually, Mayor Tappan, this was an oops placed on this agenda, so I am requesting that it be tabled.
So are you making a motion?
Yes. I move to table this item.
Thank you.
Now that will require it to be on the next available
Yes.
agenda. Are they ready to do that?
That was the original intent.
Okay.
Motion? I have a motion.
Second?
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to table this item to move us along tonight. Any further discussion? All in favor of tabling this item? Aye.
Discussion on the motion to table. You know that? Just so you know.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, that is the end of our new business. Next item, the next few items we have are executive sessions, but until our next ordinance takes place, I'd like to ask council's permission that we move boards and commissions discussion up before our executive sessions.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you. Number 17, discussion by council pertaining to the board reports. Are there any board reports by liaisons?
I have one. We met last Tuesday, and of course they released the water study draft to us, and I think Brian's going to be trying to set up where we'll have a presentation to the council on the high points of that fine instrument. It'll be very interesting. So I know the council's going to be looking forward to that. And then the second item is I spoke to him about running power out to Horseshoe Bend, and he has come up with an alternative plan which we'd like to get on the next council agenda for discussion. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
The Substance Abuse Task Force met, and we basically just brainstormed ideas to what we could offer kids in schools as far as things to do in counseling to prevent it ahead of time, and also what we can do to help our community with people who already have a substance issue. And we just tossed around some ideas for that.
Thank you. Library board did not meet, didn't have a quorum.
My board also did not have a quorum at the community center. So I need to remove I need to make a motion to remove an agenda item from the table.
Wasn't tabled.
No, sorry, moving on to item 17.2. We tabled the appointment to the board.
Tabled?
We tabled it till we got a, so I move that we remove that from the table.
Moved on table 17.2. Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Madam Clerk, please introduce.
A resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Page, Coconino County, Arizona, making an appointment to the Page Utility Enterprises Board per Chapter 31, City Organization, Section 31.57, Page Utility Enterprises Board of the Page, Arizona Code of Ordinances.
So if you recall, we had 4 great candidates. We sent that back to the board for recommendation. There's a letter on the dais, should be at everyone's plate with a letter of the unanimous consent of the board.
I'd like to adopt resolution number 1222-19 and accept the board's recommendation to appoint
Second?
Alan Nelson.
Second?
A motion and a second for Alan Nelson. Any further discussion? All those in favor of appointing Alan Nelson to the Page Utility Board, term ending 2021, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'd like to say we did have some good candidates. Ms. Parker, we do have an opening on the planning and zoning if you are still interested in helping us out on the city. But okay. Let us know. We'll get you that appointment. We have nothing under departments and no claims. I guess we can enter. So let me read these. Let me read these executive sessions. Number 16.1, executive session on the rodeo grounds, which is ASR 38431.03A7. And we have it 16.2, executive session ARS 38-431.03A4 on Horseshoe Bend update. Do we want to stay in for all 4? I think we should just do all 4 with the reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to read them all then. Executive session pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A1. Page City Attorney Joshua Smith annual evaluation. And 16.4, executive session ARS 38.4-431.03A1. Page City Clerk Kim Larson annual evaluation.
Move we go into all 4 executive sessions to start.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion on entering executive session? When we return, there will be no more items on the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.